in a minute, in a few seconds here. Good afternoon, everyone. We are very happy that Regional Science Center is once again come back with one more important event on very important occasion, World Environment Day. And we are thankful to everyone who are always coming, joining our program and participating in the events. In these trying times, we all are fighting against the common enemy. And we have to restore ourselves from that very challenging time. The same spirit, energy, and motivation is also required for restoring our Mother Earth's ecosystem. And that is all about this decade as well, which is declared by United Nations Environmental Program. And we have very esteemed galaxy of panelists for today's panel discussion. And since we have very tight schedule, after this event, we are also having very important event at 3 p.m. So we will, without further ado, we will start this programs. Regional Science Center Bhopal has collaborated with the IPCO Bhopal, and both of the institutions have brought this program together for all of you. We have our colleague, he is also the project coordinator of our science center. I'll ask him to say a few words, and after that, immediately we will start this program. Krishnendu ji, over to you.
Good afternoon to all. At first, I express my sincere gratitude to all the dignitaries on this platform. And I also welcome all the viewers to the virtual platform of Regional Science Center Bhopal. I feel it precious for me here to introduce Regional Science Center Bhopal. The center was inaugurated and dedicated to the nation on 12 January 1995. The center is one of the constituent unit of National Council of Science Museum, our mother organization, an autonomous body under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Under the aegis of NCSM, this center beholds vision for the people of the central part of India, Madhya Pradesh, to popularize science and technology, inculcate scientific temper, spirit of inquiry, portray the role of science in human welfare, foster creative talent and innovative ideas. Concisely, our major mandate is science popularization and science communication amongst the general mass and in particular students. This we do through a wide range of activities ranging from developing interactive exhibits, scientific tools, portray of thematic galleries dealing in science topic, to the action-packed educational programs. One such education program is a celebration of special days. And today we are here for one such crucial day, which is celebrated worldwide, that is World Environment Day. This is to grow awareness about our environment and its importance in sustaining life. This year's theme being reimagining, recreate and restore, which I feel have to be understood minutely because through the reading of the various technical documents, it indicates that imbalance in our environment, which evolved with billions of years of Earth existence, is somehow due to the modern man activities whose existence is of some 5,000 years only. And so as an organization like our needs to disseminate the views of scientific fraternity to the general mass and students and to grow awareness so that our environment doesn't get neglected in the race of development. So without holding this platform for more, I stop here to pass the stage to the experts to whom I am also eagerly waiting to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnendu. And we are very thankful. Myself is Saket Singh Kaurav, curator of this Regional Science Center Bhopal. And now we would like to introduce our very important, esteemed galaxy of panelists. As per the series of the interaction, I would introduce Professor Ashish Deshpande. He is working at Department of Management in the National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, Bhopal. He is a recipient of Eco Frontier Fellowship from Japan, and he has served as head Department of Management Studies at MNIT Bhopal as well. He has been contributing in various fields and leading many projects and also published papers. He has contributed to India's national communication to the United Nations Frameworks Convention on Climate Change. So thank you, sir, for joining us. And sir's work is very long, and definitely we will put on our YouTube channel for our viewers to read more about our experts. And the next speaker in the series, Professor Manmohan Kapse, who is our moderator of the program as well. Professor Manmohan Kapse is an architect and urban planner. He is a fellow of Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, which we all know as IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Kapse has done research, consultancy, assignments with many national and international agencies. He has authored many books, contributed papers in national and international journals, and very important part, he has authored many reports for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for the United Nations. And that was awarded Nobel Prize also in 2007, Nobel Peace Prize, IPCC report. And we are very honored to have him on board, and he's on our request moderating today's program. And another is Dr. Kaneko Morita, is a senior researcher at the Forestry and Forest Product Research Institute, Japan. She is also a visiting research fellow at the United Nations University Institute for Advanced Studies of Sustainability. Very appropriate and directly relevant for today's event. Thank you, ma'am. And she is also project assistant professor at Keio University. She has done her PhD from Tokyo Institute of Technology, and she attended the Young Scientist Summer Program at International Institute for Applied Science. She has been actively involved in this area, and very important part, she has been contributing to IPCC report. Not only previous, she is also actively right now writing for this new IPCC report. Thank you, ma'am, coming directly live from your place from Japan. And another very great scientist we have, Professor Chetan Singh Solanki. He is an educator, researcher, innovator, and by the way, he's on unpaid leave from IIT Bombay for a longer time. And he has been undertaking Energy Swaraj Yatra through a solar bus for 11 years until 2030. It's a bigger mission, and we all have to support him. In this Yatra, Professor Solanki has pledged not to go to home. We in isolation always feel going back to home, but he has taken place for 10 years. Great dedication for this man for the science. Thank you, sir, for such a great motivation for bringing public movement. He has contributed immensely in scientific field. He has patents also in his credit, and his work and his contribution received IEEE's Global Grand Prize of US $100,000 award, Prime Minister's Innovation Award, and also many publications in his credit. And his biodata is very long, which cannot be summarized in this very small, brief discussion. So thank you, sir, for joining us directly. And for our viewers who feel always modernized, studio-based approaches, sir is directly live from very remote area in Madhya Pradesh. And very important aspect, he is also brand ambassador of solar energy for Madhya Pradesh government. Thank you, sir. He is under the banyan tree right now in the bus, and he is live directly from that location. And last but not the least, Professor Thakkar. He is presently General Manager at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Development and State Coordinator, Government of Madhya Pradesh, State Knowledge Management Center on Climate Change. He is the very important, actively working expert in the field of climate change for the Government of Madhya Pradesh as well. He is leading team of SKMCCC to revise the State Climate Change Action Plan. Sir will tell about it very shortly. And he is also anchor in since last more than 2 decades. So without further ado, I would request our today's program's moderator, Professor Kapse, to take lead and take forward from here. Thank you, sir, for joining all of you. And ma'am, sir, mic is over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me thank the Regional Science Center Bhopal for organizing this program on World Environment Day. The theme for today's program is Reimagine, Recreate and Restore. We shall be discussing the process and ways and means of ecosystem restoration and protecting our environment in today's panel discussion. I have been told that we have a request from the audience today that for a wider reach, it would be good if the program can be made available in Hindi. As many of the students find it easy to understand if the content is available in Hindi. We are fortunate that we have an international expert with us in today's program. Therefore, it would not be appropriate to conduct all of the program in Hindi. But what I would do is I shall try and present the gist of discussion in Hindi from time to time. I'm briefly switching to Hindi. Please pardon Murita-san for switching to Hindi. You may not be able to follow next few sentences. नमस्कार, आज के कार्यक्रम में आप सभी का स्वागत है। विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस पर आज के कार्यक्रम के आयोजन के लिए मैं रीजनल साइंस सेंटर को धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा। आज के कार्यक्रम की विषय वस्तु रीइमेजिन, रिक्रिएट और रिस्टोर पर आधारित है। यह विषय है कि हम अपने पारिस्थितिकी तंत्र को समझकर कैसे उसका पुनर्निर्माण करें या उसे पुनर्स्थापित करें, ताकि हमने जो पर्यावरण प्रदूषण फैलाया है उससे हम कैसे दूर कर सकेंगे। इसके तरीकों पर आज हम चर्चा करेंगे। मुझे बताया गया कि आज के कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने वाले हमारे दर्शकों में से कुछ लोगों ने चाहा है कि कार्यक्रम हिंदी में आयोजित हो ताकि हम अधिक लोगों तक पहुंच सकें। आज के कार्यक्रम में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय विशेषज्ञ उपस्थित हैं, इसलिए पूरे कार्यक्रम का आयोजन हिंदी में संभव नहीं हो सकेगा। मैं प्रयास करूंगा कि कार्यक्रम के विशेष बिंदुओं पर समय समय पर हिंदी में आपके लिए अनुवाद प्रस्तुत करूं। हमारे 3 विषय विशेषज्ञ हिंदी की जानकारी रखते हैं, हिंदी जानते हैं, इसलिए यदि आप कुछ प्रश्न हिंदी में पूछना चाहेंगे तो 3 विषय विशेषज्ञों तक पहुंच सकेंगे। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय विशेषज्ञ के लिए मैं आपके हिंदी में पूछे गए प्रश्नों का अनुवाद कर उनके लिए प्रस्तुत करूंगा। Now I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the panelists for today's program. We have with us 4 panelists, and one by one I would request them to present their views for a short duration, and then we would have some time towards the end for discussion. मैं अब विषय विशेषज्ञों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो अपने विचार रखें और कार्यक्रम के अंत में सभी लोग अपने प्रश्न पूछ सकेंगे। ये YouTube पर लाइव प्रोग्राम चल रहा है, इसलिए आप अपने कमेंट्स द्वारा हमसे प्रश्न पूछ सकेंगे जो हम विषय विशेषज्ञों को कार्यक्रम के अंत में देंगे ताकि वो उन प्रश्नों के उत्तर दे सकें। To start the program, I would request Professor Ashish Deshpande to make a short presentation so that we can move forward. Professor Ashish Deshpande, please.
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर कापसे, धन्यवाद। और आज के विशेष प्रोग्राम में आमंत्रित करने का मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ, और कनक-san आपका भी धन्यवाद करता हूँ। I'll make a presentation now on basically about low carbon society, which is becoming the most important and the useful topic of the day. Can you see my presentation now?
No, sir, as of now.
No, just a second. It's coming up.
No, sir, it's not coming up. Yeah. It's coming up now.
Okay. Is it visible to everyone, sir?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, the low carbon society, I will try to, it's a very big concept, but I will try to limit it within 8 minutes to talk about what are their concept, how it has emerged, and how various studies are taken up, and how things are emerging around us. So basically, a low carbon society is where people collaborate to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions, whether emitted from our daily life or from industries or factory processes. So the ultimate aim is to produce only enough carbon dioxide that can be absorbed by the nature. So that can be what we call it carbon neutral. So this is the basic premise on which low carbon society concept has been formulated, has been developed, and has been brought up. But why this is important and why we need to go forward? So the basically which we are looking at around us, there is a great deal of climate change happening, and those are impacting our life. So the more frequent and intense these climate change parameters which has been listed here, like warm weather or a frequent heat wave or heavy precipitation or intense tropical cyclone. So all these things which we are witnessing around us are now reality and happening. We see the strength of every typhoon, the weather changes which are happening are getting more extreme in nature. So more frequent and intense droughts, storms or heat waves, rising sea levels or melting glaciers, warming oceans are directly harm us and destroys the places where we live. So it affects our livelihoods. So as a climate change worsens or becomes dangerous, events are becoming more frequent and severe, and that is affecting us in a bigger way. So with this understanding of the climate change and its impact, it becomes important that we had to take certain actions. And to take those actions, United Nations Framework for Climate Change was established in 1992, and they looked upon the stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration at a level that would be prevent from the dangerous atmospheric interferences. So to assess this climate system, there are many studies have gone into it, and they looked at the various climate cycles. And then one study carried out or very well known as Stern Review on the Economics of Climate Change, published in 2006. They proposed that 1% of the global GDP per annum is required to invest to avoid the worsen effect of this. And then in 2008, they revised it. They said that the estimated annual cost of achieving this stabilization between 500 to 500 ppm, that means the maximum, the possible which can be achieved could be 2% of the global GDP. So that if you see in the graph, if we continue to do what we are doing in a business as usual scenario, we will double our GHG emissions over a period of time from 2000 to 2050. To bring it down to 550 ppm, you can understand that 1% of the GDP or 2% of the GDP is required. So going for a 450 ppm will be still more intense efforts which will be needed to reach at that level, where 70 gigatons of CO2 equivalent we require to reduce. So this is becoming a major task or a major area now to look at this, how this has come and where we are using our resources in a way that these stabilization requirements are emerging. So we look at the next slide, which talks about the impact in terms of GHG emissions. Which sector, which economic activities which we are doing leads to production of or highest contribution of comes from the major economic sector. You can see there that the manufacturing and construction industry in 2016 has contributed about 25%, a quarter of the total emissions coming from this sector. Then transport sector, residential and commercial sector. So these becomes the major economic sectors which are contributing to the GHG emissions. So this becomes areas where we need to focus upon in terms of LCS and work upon those areas. If you look at the land use change, it is again contributing to 6.6% in 2016, which with the forest fires and things which has happened in last 2-3 years has gone up substantially. So why LCS? So as we see that if we look at carbon emissions targets going up, it will be reaching around 9 gigatons of carbon per year in 2010 earlier, and now we would like to reduce it to 3 gigatons as per the various studies and various, which is for the stabilization purpose. So to reach there, how we will go about it? So 450 ppm, which we thought that will be required 60 to 70% in global CO2 emissions by 2050. Can we do this? Yes, we can do this. For that purpose, how we can reduce beyond those? So to come down at this level, we have to take number of measures, and we have to continue reducing further beyond 2050 as well. So basically, we looked at 2050 targets, how that can be achieved. So from that point of view, so we looked at how GHG per capita emissions have been talking. Developing countries and developed countries' contributions has been looked up. So we see that they are at a different scale. At this level, if developed countries have to take, they have to come to the low carbon world, they have to take a deep cuts. Whereas developing countries they have potential, but if they continue to do that way, there will be a high damage to the economic and natural system. So what we need to focus is to go for a greener or a low carbon world in a fastest way for developing countries, and developed countries has to cut down in sharply, which they are already committed and doing in those sense. We need to, as a developing countries, have to leapfrog development. We'll talk about leapfrog development separately or in the sessions. So such studies which has been taken up has been carried out by various agencies. one such study we did at Bhopal, and which is known as LCS Bhopal to 2035. In this LCH approach, we always look at greater demand for energy efficiencies of energy consumptions, as well as reduction in GHG emissions, addressing a wide range of issues in urban transportation or industrial or residential or commercial sectors. So we identified 7 actions for Bhopal city and formulated in mechanism that which can influence the existing energy consumption. So first action we looked at is in terms of the green governance. So how that can be initiated. This is government's initiatives in terms of towards low carbon society. Second, we looked at in terms of holistic habitat, where energy efficiencies in buildings has been looked up. Then third, we proposed an action is about the sustainable style. That means the low carbon lifestyles which we can bring in our changes. And fourth action we looked at in terms of cellular city forms. So it implies that multi-nuclei land use planning systems which can be brought into system. Then action 5, which was supposed from this study, was the form and flow. That is where we talk about the BRTS and the integrated transport within the city structure. So based on the city structure, what kind of a form and flow should be there that should be taken into account so that the energy efficiencies could be enhanced and emissions could be reduced. Then we looked at the 6th action is in terms of nurturing nature, which implies that we should leverage on natural and historical assets like lake conservation, which is already being done by the MP government here, rainwater harvesting, social forestry, heritage system, ecotourism. All these efforts or policy imperatives are needed, and those actions are being suggested in this study. Third looks at the 7th is about the rural riches. So we have to focus on not only promoting better lifestyle for urban areas, but also rural areas. So the complete report of this is available and the interfaces which is there with you. So the report is available on MP State Knowledge Management Center on Climate Change. The link has been provided, and the similar Asian region studies and the global studies are available on the National Institute of Environmental Studies, Japan's Low Carbon Society 2050 project website. So 2050 nees.go.jp, where you can find the complete study reports of this report, as well as many other reports of the various cities in India and particularly in Asia. Now let's look at the principles of the low carbon society. As we have understood, looked at the dimensions which requires a low carbon society. So we focus on what are the principles and how the low carbon society can be achieved. So all countries, every individual in those countries have to take certain understanding, awareness, measures to address this issue, and global emissions has to be brought down at the 2050 level. These were the targets which were taken up. So the one major area which we need to focus is about the carbon minimization. So minimization of carbon dioxide emissions from all sectors as listed sectors earlier in the study. We can go into that detail when you study that report. Then the second principle is basically about the simpler and richer quality of life, which we need to develop in terms of shifting from mass consumption society towards a quality of life oriented society. In a broader picture, we need to be more simplistic. I think COVID has taught us how we should be going into the quality of life oriented society. So we should be taking those measures. We see a lot of reflections coming out in terms of the quality of life from the COVID lessons. Similarly, coexistence with the nature. So these are the 3 basic principles which are of the low carbon society targets which we want to achieve about. So coexistence with the nature is maintaining and restoring natural environment that is essential for the low carbon society. Then these are the basic 3 principles on which all countries, organizations, entities, individuals have to take actions, and these philosophies has to be adopted. Coming to the strategies part, strategies to develop a low carbon society, we look in terms of the desirable actions for the citizens. So we all know the desirable actions are there, but we have to imbibe them and use them, like eco partnership or eco thinking or eco sharing or practicing eco learning or eco buying, eco use and eco disposal. All these are individual actions which has to be taken to attain a low carbon society. On the other hand, if you look at the desirable actions for the business, they require to develop a low carbon product and promotion of technological innovations for the global level. So there are a lot of new innovations are required, green business, green tech, things are to be brought in so that the business can be flourished and can also be a part of the low carbon society philosophy. So create new business model or promotion of disclosure of environmental information that creates awareness about what business, what product you buy. So eco-labeling, green labelings are now becoming a very part of the every product which we buy. Even for example, a refrigerator or a fridge we buy, we go for a type of star ratings in India. So that has become a very important, so that promotion of disclosure of environmental information becomes one of the major steps in understanding and contributing the low carbon society efforts. Then actions for the government. Many actions have already been taken, but many are required. So institutional infrastructures are to be established, soft and hard infrastructures are required. They have to focus on conserving natural capitals and then developing IT applications, like the efforts which are being taken up in India in terms of smart cities and smart IT-enabled cities, digital cities, which are taking up. We need to focus on those as well. So GHG information on all products are to be taken up. And then finally, looking at the behavioral changes, where we need to understand all of citizens, business, government has to look into the sense of crisis which we need to, and sense of responsibility for everything what we do has to be taken up. Even for this presentation, I need to look at, I should be within those time period so that more carbon emissions from this activity cannot be taken. So let's look at the individual's environmental footprint. I'll just tell you that the effect that a person has on an environment is huge. This could be amount of natural resources, water or energy that we use. So this is in the form of energy. So this becomes a carbon footprint or an environmental footprint or a bio footprint. You can calculate in different ways. I request all the viewers to go think about your own environmental footprint and then make a list of everything what you do. So everything you use which contributes towards your environmental footprint. You might find that the list is very long one, and then everything we need has an impact. So that we need to calculate ourselves. So if you are ready, let's try to do this. There is a website called footprintcalculator.org. You can go to this website and calculate your own footprint. A moment it will come out, it will pop up here. I'm just waiting. My net may be slow, but yes, this also is anyway, I'll skip this part. You can go to footprintcalculator.org, where you can calculate your footprint in terms of how environmental contributions you are making. And then I'll skip this. This is the one slide which so you can take a first step and do this survey for yourself and come out with what are the ecological footprints are there. Otherwise, you can go to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Worldwide Wildlife Fund website. This is carbon footprint calculator at these two websites, and Nature also has published what a carbon footprint, nature.org. So these are the two sites on which we can calculate and look into how the carbon emissions we are contributing in that sense. So basically, our purpose is to look at how mitigating climate change through achieving major reduction in carbon emissions in the context of sustainable development, and we require fundamental change in which way we produce and consume energy. So the way we do business, the way we live in our life. So we need to lower our carbon intensity of our economic activities and perhaps eventually decarbonize our economy and society. With these words, I thank you for giving me an opportunity. I can be reached on this mail ID. If you have questions, we'll take up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Deshpande.
Just
अभी
closing my
प्रोफेसर देशपांडे ने लो कार्बन विकास कैसे किया जाए इस पर अपने विचार व्यक्त किए, जिसमें जलवायु परिवर्तन से होने वाले नुकसान से बचाव के बारे में बताया गया। उन्होंने बताया कि ग्रीन हाउस गैस उत्सर्जन को कम करना आवश्यक है और हमें इसे 350 ppm से नीचे लाने की आवश्यकता है। हम अलग अलग गतिविधियां दिन भर में करते हैं जिससे ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस उत्सर्जित होती हैं, उन्हें हम कम कैसे करें, इसके बारे में विचार मंथन के लिए लो कार्बन सोसाइटी एक विचार प्रतिपादित किया गया है। यदि हम अपने उत्सर्जन को कम कर सकें तो ये पूरे विश्व के लिए उपयोगी होगा। यद्यपि भारत का उत्सर्जन अभी कम है, लेकिन भविष्य में बढ़ने वाले उत्सर्जन को देखते हुए हमें अभी से प्रयास करने पड़ेंगे। प्रोफेसर देशपांडे ने भोपाल शहर के लिए लो कार्बन डेवलपमेंट प्लान के बारे में भी चर्चा की। ऐसी कई रिपोर्ट्स अलग अलग शहरों के लिए बनाई गई हैं जो विभिन्न वेबसाइट्स पर उपलब्ध हैं, जिसमें कार्बन कम करने के उपायों के बारे में जानकारी दी गई है। अंत में प्रोफेसर देशपांडे ने बताया कि यदि हम व्यक्तिगत तौर पर अपने कार्बन फुटप्रिंट को कैलकुलेट करना चाहते हैं कि हम पर्यावरण को कितना प्रदूषित कर रहे हैं या कितना कार्बन हम पर्यावरण में दे रहे हैं अपनी गतिविधियों के कारण, उसको भी हम विभिन्न वेबसाइट्स पर जाकर कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं। Thank you, Professor Deshpande, for your address. We would move on with the program. Now I would be requesting Dr. Kanako Morita. She is joining us from Japan. She will be presenting her views on sharing her experiences on sustainable development goals and future cities in Japan. प्रोफेसर मोरिता हमें जापान से ज्वाइन कर रही हैं और वो सतत विकास लक्ष्यों पर जापान में किस प्रकार के प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं उसके बारे में अपने अनुभवों को हम लोगों के साथ साझा करेंगे। डॉक्टर मोरिता, प्लीज यू कैन शेयर योर स्क्रीन एंड मेक अ प्रेजेंटेशन।
Can I see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm Kanako Morita. I'm a climate change and biodiversity policy researcher from Japan, and I'm very honored to be part of this panel. And first of all, I would like to express my deepest condolences to those affected by COVID-19. In my talk, I would like to briefly explain about some Japanese good practices on sustainable development goals. As you know, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, are the global goals adopted by the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in 2015. And the goals include 3 pillars: economic, social, and environmental pillars. In Japan, SDGs have been implemented at both national and local levels, including climate change actions. And at the national level in Japan, there are policies of SDGs, such as SDGs implementation guideline principles and SDG action plans. And there are also other relevant policies, such as global warming countermeasure plans and climate change adaptation plan and basic energy plan. And there are also at the local level, there are policies of SDGs, such as SDG Future Cities plan that I'm going to explain later. And also there are other plans, including plans related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. In both national and local level, there are common challenges in implementing SDGs, such as enhancing public and private partnerships and capacity building, such as capacity building of local stakeholders and policy making and implementation. And also we need finance to implement some actions. So we need more finance mobilization and multiple stakeholders participation, including private sector, non-governmental organizations, civil citizens, and also various type of innovations are important. This slide shows that SDG futures, about the SDG future cities in Japan. SDG future cities are the cities that the government local governments that will make efforts and make proposal for achieving SDGs. Currently, 124 cities have been selected as SDGs future cities. And I'm going to explain two cases. One is Shimokawa Town, which is located in Hokkaido, which is a northern part of Japan. And this is a case of small town, and the population is only over 3,000. But it received the award from SDGs award from Japanese Prime Minister. And another example is Yokohama City, which is a case of big city, the urban city, and which population is over 3.7 million. And this is about the Shimokawa Town. And Shimokawa Town's main industry is forestry. And the town is using cyclical forest management system. And also it implements zero emission wood processing and utilize woods and materials for biomass and produce clean energy from biomass, the biomass boiler. And then the clean energy is used for the compact town of the Shimokawa Town. And so, as you can see, it's Shimokawa Town, all the industries and the activities contribute to multiple goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, SDG 15, the life of land, SDG 12, sustainable production, and clean energy, the SDG 7, and of course the SDG 13, the climate change goals. And this is a picture of Shimokawa Town. I visited there in 2019. And the facility that you can see is a biomass boiler that I mentioned. And the female student who is holding a big paper was a master's student at Keio University, and she was an intern at Shimokawa Town office. And she contributed in holding an event to raise awareness of SDGs among local people. What I was impressed by Shimokawa Town is that many people are aware of SDGs, and multiple stakeholders have strong willingness to contribute to SDGs and really hoping to make their town better. And also young people and females are quite active in implementing SDGs in Shimokawa, and young people's and females' ideas and activities are well incorporated in the Shimokawa Town's actions. Lastly, I would like to show about the Yokohama City's cases. Yokohama City is a really big city, and it is a city that has been vulnerable to flooding. And currently, Yokohama is building a resilient city. And this is an example of approaches to build resilient cities. And Yokohama City is introducing a green infrastructure, which could contribute both disaster risk reduction and also the natural environment. And these are the example of green infrastructure, and that includes addressing flooding, include forest land conservation, and also installing rainwater storage tanks. So there are active discussion on installing green infrastructure in urban city level in Japan. So I have briefly explained two cases from SDG future cities in Japan, and I believe that there are many good practices, not only in Japan, but also in India. And in order to promote SDGs implementation, including climate change mitigation and adaptation, one of the important things are to exchange the information of good practices in different countries. And I think that mutual learning will be very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Morita-san. अभी हमें सतत विकास लक्ष्यों के लिए जापान में राष्ट्रीय और स्थानीय स्तर पर क्या प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं उसके बारे में डॉक्टर मोरिता ने बताया। उन्होंने बताया कि कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग और प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ में प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं ताकि इसके लिए आवश्यक धनराशि का उपयोग किया जा सके। उन्होंने दो शहरों के बारे में बताया, एक बहुत छोटा शहर होक्काइडो में शिमोकावा और योकोहामा जो कि एक बड़ा शहर है, दोनों में एसडीजीज के लिए क्या प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं उनके बारे में उन्होंने जानकारी दी। विशेष तौर पर उन्होंने कहा कि एक छोटे से गांव शिमोगावा में भी लोग सामाजिक, आर्थिक और पर्यावरण मुद्दों पर बहुत अधिक कार्य कर रहे हैं। स्कूलों में जाने वाले विद्यार्थी भी प्रोजेक्ट बनाकर एसडीजी के लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने के लिए अपना कंट्रीब्यूशन दे रहे हैं। योकोहामा शहर में यही कार्य बड़े स्तर पर किए जा रहे हैं। उन्होंने साथ ही ये कहा कि हम ऐसे विश्व में प्राप्त अच्छे अनुभवों का भारत में भी उपयोग कर भारत में भी एसडीजी के लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने की ओर कार्य कर सकते हैं। थैंक यू Morita-san. I would be moving to the next person. We would be taking the questions at the end. If we are receiving any questions in the YouTube link, I would come back to you later. So we'll be moving to the next presenter now. Next presenter with us is Professor Chetan Solanki. He would be discussing about his experiences, insights from his ongoing 10-year-long solar yatra, and he would be enriching us about use of solar energy on all our daily needs. So, over to Professor Solanki.
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर कापसे। और सबसे पहले तो मैं ये जब शीर्षक फिक्स हुआ कि हमें आज जो विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस के दिन चर्चा करना है री इमेजिन, रिक्रिएट एंड रीस्टोर के टॉपिक पर, तो मैंने सोचा कि ऐसा क्यों करने की जरूरत है। व्हाई डू वी नीड टू डू दिस एंड व्हाई डू वी नीड टू रीस्टोर समथिंग। The fact is that we have lost the balance. Our society, our environment is in distress, and that's why we need to restore. So let us recognize that fact. Why do we need to recreate? Because whatever we have created is really not in the right direction. It is becoming a self-destruction mode. I mean, that's why we are, destroying so much our own natural habitat. So we need to recreate. And before you do that, all our imagination of the modern society so far is not going in the right direction. And therefore, probably we need to reimagine what we need to do and what should our future be looking like. And therefore, what I would like to bring a point here, that when we want to recreate, reimagine, restore, let us look at the fundamentals of our existence. Let us look at the fundamentals of sustainability. And if you're not following a fundamental boundary conditions that is given by the nature, there is no way, there is no amount of science and technology which can ever make human life sustainable on this planet. I hope on this World Environment Day, we understand the severity of the climate change. We understand how bad situation is so that we can take right action. So therefore, I would like to put two fundamental laws of existence, I call them, or you can say laws of sustainability. And those are based on the Gandhian philosophy, and Gandhian philosophy itself is based on bigger Vedic knowledge, shastras that exist, the wisdom that were existed for centuries and thousands of centuries. So one thing that Gandhiji said, that there is only enough in the world for everyone's need, not for anyone's greed. And I think this is very fundamental to our existence. Gandhiji was not a scientist like Einstein or Newton, and therefore he could not formulate these words in terms of laws. But if I have to convert these Gandhian words into a law, then I would write it like this, in an ecosystem of finite resources, there has to be finite consumption. In an ecosystem of finite resources, there has to be finite consumption. So our ecosystem is finite. Earth is a finite biological ecosystem. There are fixed amount of resources, fixed amount of water, fixed amount of surface, fixed amount of land, fixed amount of forest. Everything is fixed, everything is finite. But we, the modern humans of 21st century, trying to produce more, consume more, produce more, consume more, ever increasing GDPs. Is that possible at all? Absolutely not. It's not possible. The base from which you are taking all this resources itself is a constant. How can you ever increase your GDP and production and consumption? And therefore, what we are doing, we are violating these fundamental laws of existence. In an ecosystem of finite resources, there has to be finite consumption. So therefore, the fundamental formula, a sutra that we can take from here is limit your consumption. That is rule number 1. And if you're violating this rule, we will not be sustainable. Simple. Rule number 2, or the fundamental law number 2, it is also based on Gandhian philosophy. Gandhiji said that we do not need mass production. We do not need mass production. We need production by masses. And why so? Because every time you centralize the solution, every time you do the mass production, the distribution of the wealth created in this manner is always going to be unequal. And if the distribution is unequal, there will be inequity in the society. And if there is inequity in the society, there will be lack of peace in the society. There will be more violence, there will be more stress in the society. And that is what we all see in the world. As we are growing economically, as we are growing scientifically, we are not becoming more peace-loving people. In fact, the violence is increasing in the world, which means whatever you are doing is not going in the right direction. And therefore, following the Gandhian philosophy, what is required? We need production by masses. Let there be small production units everywhere. And whenever we do the production by masses, there will be more distributed generation. There will be more distributed consumption. The fruits of such production and consumption will go equally to almost everybody. And that is fundamental to the peace and long-term sustainability. So the second law we can state is as in an ecosystem of finite resources, distributed production. So the first law of existence says us limited consumption. The second law is distributed production. These are very fundamental to every resource we the human beings are consuming on this planet. And if you're not following this law, we are definitely going to put our sustainability, our future, in fact, the entire existence of humanity in danger. And therefore we must follow this. Unfortunately, though we have Paris Agreement, though we have so many protocols, though every government is committed to reduce carbon dioxide emission, the real fact is that the actual carbon dioxide emission is increasing every single year. Last year, from 2015 to last year, it was increasing with the rate of 1.7%. Are we really doing something? Are we really learning from our mistake? No, it doesn't look like that we are doing something. And that is why I believe that whatever efforts government are making all over the world, probably it is not going to be sufficient. Whatever they are doing is great, but it is not going to be sufficient. The problem, the scale of the problem is so enormous that we have to bring every person, every individual, every society, every organization on board, because all of us are contributing to the problem. And that's why when we need to reimagine our future, when we need to recreate our future, we need to do it in a manner where we have limited consumption and localized production. When we apply this to energy, it becomes energy Swaraj. If everybody starts to generate their own energy and start consuming their own energy, and it is possible with the solar energy, with the renewable energy, because only renewable energy sources are available everywhere. So when I start generating my own energy, when I start consuming my own energy, I don't have to depend on somebody else. I don't have to burn carbon source. I will not be responsible for emission of carbon dioxide. I will not be responsible for the climate change. I will not be exploiting somebody else. So therefore, limiting my needs and generating locally all my energy needs with the help of solar energy, with the help of wind energy, with the help of biomass energy is in a real sense reimagination of the energy sector for the entire world. That is energy Swaraj is energy by locals for locals. And I believe that if we adopt energy Swaraj, and not if we adopt energy Swaraj, we have to adopt energy Swaraj, then we will solve many problems. We'll solve the problem of climate change. We'll solve the problem of job creation, skill development. We will solve the problem of dependency on the other countries, energy security, women empowerment, child development, all these parameters which are part of the sustainable development goals. are going to be targeted together by one single parameter. The goal number 7, SDG 7, is anyway in the center of all 17 sustainable development goals. Let us do the goal number 7 in the right, appropriate manner. Let us reimagine our energy systems of the entire world. Let us recreate our own energy solution. And if we do that, I'm sure the entire environment will get restored. The sustainability will be forever. The peace and happiness will be also restored. And I think that is what fundamental to. And that is why I'm sitting in the bus. We need to make a public movement. We need to create a public movement. We need billions of people to come on board and adopt to Energy Swaraj so that we all together can solve the problem. We all together are creating the problem, and we all together need to solve the problem. And that's the whole purpose of Energy Swaraj movement. My Yatra, Energy Swaraj Yatra, is from 2020 till 2030. And I hope as the Yatra goes along, I hope the events like coronavirus will give us a sense so that we, in real sense, starts to reimagine our future. In real sense, we start to recreating our energy solution so that we all together can restore the balance on this beautiful planet Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Solanki. Your life is an example. You are leading by example how we should proceed in our life, trying to conserve the energy resources as much as possible and use renewable energy resources so that we do not damage the environment. We would have to learn from your examples. We would definitely like to learn much more from you. Please continue with your Solar Yatra, spreading the light of sun everywhere. That would definitely bring some kind of a movement where we would start valuing our environment and especially reduce the damages from climate change. Thank you for joining. The last speaker for today is Shri Lokendra Thakkarji. Lokendra Thakkarji would be discussing about ecosystem restoration as a nature-based solution for climate change. Without any further delay, I would request Thakkarji to please discuss about the topic.
Thank you very much, Professor Kapshe. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I had to request you for a change in the order of the speaking, because we had a big event today by Honorable Chief Minister. And I'll talk about this event a little later, but thank you very much for giving this opportunity to me, to the Regional Science Center. And I'm told that APCO is also part of this webinar. So I'm, in a sense, host also, if not host, co-host of Mr. Kaurav and his organization. And I welcome you all and thanks for the opportunity. As Dr. Kapshe talked about, that I'd like to say a few words on the ecosystem restoration as a nature-based solution for climate change. So enough of information has been given by Dr. Deshpande and then also Professor Solanki about the climate change and the need for that. So I am not going into the details of the climate change as to what climate change is all about, what is carbon neutral development, what is, I'm not going into that debate because as you all know, that whether we should be actually going net zero emission or not, that is also debatable, although many countries, in fact, 60% of the total emission that is being caused by different countries and industries and multinational corporates, they have already pledged on paper as to they are going to reduce their carbon emission and become carbon neutral or net zero. But how are they going to do it? What are the costs and at whose cost they are going to do it? That is not yet clear. So I'm not going into the details of the debate that is going to take place as far as emissions are concerned. I myself is not a person from emission side. I am more in climate change. I consider myself an adaptation person. So my concern is more oriented towards adaptation, and which is why I'm very interested in looking at what ecosystems can actually help in mitigating the cost. When I use mitigating word, I don't mean reduction of greenhouse gas. Mitigating means addressing the problem of climate change. And I think that and I have always believed that if we are able to make our ecosystems resilient, we can achieve the objective of climate change adaptation. So what is climate change adaptation? In fact, climate change adaptation is nothing but a good development. And what is a good development? A good development is based on the principle of sustainable development, of which Dr. Solanki talked about, and Gandhian principles of consumption versus the resources that is available. Finite, you have resources are finite, so you can't have infinite consumption. So that is the basic principle. I would also like to talk about the today's subject, that the ecosystem restoration. This is very interesting, and this is not only a theme of this year's World Environment Day, but also from today itself, the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration is starting. You can so for next 10 years, the United Nations is going to keep the focus on how the countries and parties to the Biodiversity Convention and to the Climate Change Convention, how they are going to take care of their ecosystems. So let's slightly understand what we mean by the ecosystem restoration. It has actually two very simple terms. It has two sides. One is we are talking of assisting. How can we assist the recovery of degraded ecosystems? So we all know that ecosystems, be it aquatic or forest or oceanic ecosystems, or maybe agriculture, land ecosystems, mountains, these are all deserts, these are all degrading. Even desert ecosystems are degrading. So how can we actually help these degraded ecosystems to overcome, to come to its normal state, although it is not desirable also always, and it is not possible always to bring an ecosystem back to its normalcy. Yet we have to make an effort to be able to allow that system to recover, because we know that nature has the capacity to bounce back, to cleanse itself, to recreate and to regenerate. So nature has the capacity. So, and this capacity is called the carrying capacity. If we are going to degrade an ecosystem beyond its capacity to overcome, to come back to its normalcy, then we are lost. Then ecosystem is lost forever. Therefore, it is for us, there is a time available so that we can actually make our variety of ecosystems that are surrounded, we are surrounded by them, to come back and to recover themselves. The second is the conserving the ecosystem which we already have. So there is one thing that what we have lost. So what we have lost, we have to regain it. And the second is what we have, how to conserve it. Now, how do we actually assist a recovery of an ecosystem? That we need to look at. So if there are degraded forests, so we make plantations, that we also did today in the presence of Honorable Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. We have launched a huge program, public participation-based mega event of encouraging each and every individual and organizations, be it social, cultural, of any lineage, any political ideology. We are requesting each and everybody from across the state to plant at least one tree. And this time around, we have used technology also. We have created an app, which app is called Vayudut app. And the program is titled as Ankur. Ankur means regeneration. Basically, it means germination. So what we are saying, that we are requesting people to plant a tree over a period of next 2 to 3 months, wherever they want, in their home, in their courtyards, in their public places, in the schools and colleges and gardens and on streets, wherever they can take care of their plants. So they plant a tree, they upload a picture of planting a tree, they upload another picture after 35 days, indicating that their planted sapling is well surviving, and then based on that they are able to self-download a certificate that they have helped the state in creating a better ecosystem. So this event has been launched by Honorable Chief Minister by planting a tree itself, and thereby we are encouraging people to plant. And this plantation is one of the most important strategy in recovery and restoration of an ecosystem. Similarly, in aquatic ecosystem, if we are cleaning the oceanic systems, we are cleaning the rivers and lakes and wetlands, which are under huge pressure. So this is one strategy. Second is that how can we remove the pressure? Ecosystem is fine, but there is a huge pressure. There are a lot of people who are withdrawing a lot of ecosystem services out of it. Over harvesting, overdrawal of water, these things are creating a lot of pressure on the ecosystem. So therefore, first we have to help the ecosystem to recover itself by cleaning or planting a tree or whatever mechanism. There are many strategies. Second, that how can we reduce the pressure which is being felt by ecosystem. And this is what the concept of carrying capacity is all about, that we have been studying and reading all our life. Now, what we mean by conserving, the second method of restoring an ecosystem is to conserve. Now, conservation is based on the principle of sustainable development. As I said, what is sustainable development? Is nothing but a good development. A good development means that it is not at cost of anybody. It's a win-win situation when sociology, economics, ecology, people, everybody wins. That situation is called the sustainable development. There are definitions, standard, everybody knows. I need not to repeat that. We have to develop not at the cost of the future generation, but in a way that we are able to reap the benefits, and also the benefits are available for the generations to come. So these are some of the ideas that the World Environment Day theme talks about. We are losing millions of hectares of forest, losing wetlands, rivers and oceans are getting polluted. Everybody knows about it. There are figures. But thing is that by not cleaning them, by not restoring, by not allowing them to restore on their own, or not by conserving, we are losing huge amount of financial resources. People are losing their livelihoods. Therefore, by not correcting, by not recovering, restoring these ecosystems, there is a huge financial and ecological loss. There are studies which are saying that if in next 10 years, if we are able to restore forest ecosystems or wetlands or rivers or oceans, there will be trillions of dollars of equivalent of ecosystem services that we would be able to get. Therefore, there is a financial sense also involved into the entire activity. So I would like to finish my initial remarks, if there are questions, by just reading out couple of principles of ecology. There are just 2-3 lines that I want to read. Just hold a sec. I'm just coming with my paper. Just hold a sec. Yeah, there you go. So I just want to say that I want to, remind and just giving just ideas and thoughts. There are certain principles of ecology that we need to look at. I just read 2-3 lines. First is everything is connected to everything else. We are not living in a disconnected world. The basic principle of ecology is that everything is connected to everything else. Second is everything must go somewhere. It is not that we have used something and we have thrown out, that whatever is thrown out goes somewhere. So second principle ecology talks about everything must go somewhere. The third is nature knows the best. We think as a human being that we are the masters. We have conquered the nature. No, we don't know anything. We are very small fry. Nature knows the best, what is good for us and what is good for the nature. The very important principle, there is no such thing as free lunch. We think that we have reaped the benefits, but it's not free. Somebody is paying somewhere the cost of this. The last but most important thing is, in nature, there are neither rewards nor punishments. There are only consequences. And we, the international humanity, everybody is facing the consequence of, playing around, disturbing, intruding the natural ecosystem. Finally, I would like to finish my talk with the Gandhi's thoughts on ecosystem and ecology. What Gandhi said, we may utilize the gifts of nature just as we choose, but in her books, the details, the debits are always equal to credits. Gandhiji comes from a business family. So always you've looked at profit and loss. In a business book, you always have two columns, the credits and debits, like our account. So nature also have this system. It says that we may utilize the gifts of nature just as we choose, but in our books, the debits are always equal to credits. So I think with these words of Gandhi, I would like to finish my thoughts, and thank you very much again for giving me opportunity to be part of this very interesting webinar. Thank you.
So we may request all of them, all the experts, to switch on cameras here. Thank you.
I was going through the YouTube live telecast also. I have found some questions, but I also realized that those questions were general in nature. So the Regional Science Center has been very effectively answering those questions on the fly on the YouTube live. So the answers have been provided over there. If there are any further questions, then I would request Saket Singh ji to please put forth those questions to the different experts.
Sir, it is always very confusing for most of the general audience, SDG, the goals of sustainable development. So I would request Dr. Morita, if she can further elaborate for general masses so that they can connect the sustainable development goals, which is having main agenda for United Nations here.
The students are asking questions on what are sustainable development goals and how do we relate to them. There are some general questions on that. So, Dr. Morita, if you could answer that.
Yes.
Just from the students' point of view, they are school-going children and they are asking about sustainable development goals.
Yes, there are 17 goals, and I think you can see the icons when you Google the SDGs, and it covers not only environment aspect but also social and economic aspect, and it covers a lot of different types of topics, and you can find that all kind of your activities also linked to SDGs, and there are goals for education, and also we also look at the in the goals integrated way, so like environmental education or also the health issue and all kind of there are a lot of different type of goals, and so I cannot explain like whole goal about goals in here, but there are a lot of good examples, and I can share some like good example of SDGs, and in the university or at school there are also a lot of activities in Japan, so I can send some information later.
If you could tell us about a few activities which the school children might be carrying out in Japan, some activities which they are carrying out, maybe some awareness activities or some projects which they have done that would help the school students.
Yes, one is about the university activities, and it's more trying to make a net zero like university. So use a clean energy or trying to like trying to think about more energy efficiency, and also other school levels. One is a big thing is about the education. So all school children try to think about how their lives are linked to the SDGs, and how the food comes from, where the food comes from, and how to make the sustainable production and consumption of the food system. And so school children are learning how to make it the system a sustainable way. And that kind of education is really works for when they grow up, because no matter what kind of job they choose, I think they need to think about the SD, sustainable development, or like climate change issues. So I think, understanding how their life links to sustainable development goals are important.
Thank you. Professor Solanki, if you would like to give some insights on what kind of local initiatives the students can take, maybe related to the solar energy or maybe related to protecting the environment, some quick suggestions for the school children from your experiences.
Yeah, so by the way, there are two ways everybody can help. The number one is by not doing something, and number two by doing something. So by not using energy also, you are helping environment in a big way. And we see that these days, we do not use energy, but on many occasions, we misuse energy. Misuse many occasions. And I was doing an exercise with a student here where I'm parked these days. A fan was running with the full speed, at the regulator position of 5. And I was trying to, teach them what is the misuse of energy. I said, okay, let us reduce the speed of the fan, put the regulator at 4. Are you still comfortable? And they said, yeah, we are comfortable. We reduce the regulator speed further and put the it at 3. Are you still comfortable? They were comfortable, which means that even at the speed of 3, everybody was comfortable, but actually the fan was running at 5, which means whatever extra energy that was used is not a use, it is a misuse of energy.
It's wastage.
It's a wastage of energy. So as a student, if you can avoid doing many things, you will be, contributing greatly to the conservation of environment. And that great contribution will be for your own future. And whether it is about food, whether it is about clothing, whether it is about the house, whether it is about energy, everything, if you think carefully, if you pause and think, we end up misusing many things. So number one, don't misuse. That is one thing. Number two, what you can do is slowly and gradually you can start shifting your lives towards 100% solar energy. The centralized power system or power generation, I believe, is the age-old technology. It has been developed about 150 years old. Everything else has changed in our life. We do not use landline connection anymore. We always use the mobile phone. So all technologies are changing. Why not the technology of electricity generation and consumption should also change? So what is the new way of doing it? What is the new imagination of doing it? Generate on your rooftop and consume it. So I think both is by not doing something and by doing something. In both way, students today can contribute to make their own future secure.
Thank you. We are moving towards closing this program. As a moderator for today's session, I would like to take this opportunity of thanking all the 4 speakers. Professor Deshpande enlightened us on low carbon development initiatives with some case studies. Dr. Kaneko Murta shared her experiences from Japan on sustainable development goals and related activities which are going on in 2 cities in Japan. Professor Solanki told us about the importance of solar energy and reducing our consumptive practices, thereby benefiting the general environment. And Sri Loken Thakkarji told us about how important it is to restore the ecosystems so that we live peacefully with the environment without damaging the nature. He also informed us about the coming up activities of Madhya Pradesh government where students can participate. Overall, it has been an enlightening session for everybody. Thank you all for contributing. I would hand over the session further to Shri Saket Singh Ji for carrying it forward.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Regional Science Center, we are very much thankful to each and every speaker for giving their valuable time. And for all of you, ma'am, this program was attended beyond our expectation. We were having very good digital presence from the audience. So this program is in the right direction, and we are thankful to each and everyone for joining us from wherever they are in this COVID situation. Please take care. And the last but not the least, today is the day when United Nations Environmental Program is announcing decade for restoration. That means we are the last generation and we are having the last chance to restore our planet. If we are not serious enough at this point in time, I think next generation will not be able to do that. So let's make a place. Collectively, all of us will take care of our environment. And also we are thankful to Honorable Prime CM of Madhya Pradesh for initiating such a program, ANKO, which is mentioned by Professor Thakkarji from IPCO. So this is a really great initiative that Madhya Pradesh is also taking serious lead in the field of World Environment Day, on the occasion of World Environment Day. So thank you one and all once again, and please be in touch with Regional Science Center for future programs and events. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being the co-panelist, and it was a pleasure discussing with all.